Yo, what's up, you cool cats and kittens? We've got the first episode, new series, Advice from the Heart. I am stoked. So basically, Mr. Chris Hart, of iPullRank is here. Him and I, Chris, we're gonna talk all about your professional life, the experience of the
Yeah.
enterprise and marketing and SEO, but like each topic we'll dive into each week we'll dive into a different topic and kind of discuss like some of these pitfalls or opportunities or strategies that you've encountered that have helped companies be really successful at their SEO. So before we dive in, give me the like elevator pitch of your experience in the world of enterprise and why you are someone who is good to talk about this.
Sure. So really fast, I'll just kind of go through a bunch of this because I've been doing this stuff for forever at this point, since the beginning of the .com stuff. Came out of college, my undergrad was fine arts, computer graphics. I started working in a magazine company. Sitting in the lunchroom in the magazine company, and I'm reading a pre-released book of an HTML1 book, which was like this thick at the time. And I got, they send them out to find errors and whatnot.
Oh, yeah.
And people write about, right? Back in the day when people write books and paper. and a guy walked past me, he goes, "Hey, we're putting a Skunkworks team together. I see you know HTML. You want to join? We're trying to figure out how to get all our magazines online." I'm like, "Sure, no big deal." I'm thinking, like, great. I'm, new to the company, right? 12 years later, I'm a shared resource running SEO across like a pile of different divisions. There's several hundred websites. We were a private family-owned company that got huge, then went public, then got bought by a bigger organization, then was rolled private. So there's a billion years of like political understanding of the landscape, business moves, and it's as publishing online took off and the .com boom happened and the dot crash happened. So there was all of these kind of nuances that went on there during that time period. I got my MBA in marketing management, business development. But what really paid off was really understanding like what comes first, the chicken and the egg. How do you kind of build a thing around understanding what needs to happen from a business, and then what understands to happen from a data point of view. And along the way, I did a lot of really cool stuff, right? Really involved in CMS setup, like there was constant new CMSs. Like I remember everything was like hard HTML, FTP, and then there was like Netscape Gold, and and all these other kinds of like enterprise things. And then real CMSs came up, and then you're talking about sharing information and multiple networks. And so you get really as a person in the SEO space, you really have to begin to learn how to understand what's important for those who are creating content, what's important for those that are running the business, and what's important for those that are trying to do the technology on the back end to become successful, so all of it kind of works together.
And you've done agency work too, like that's kind of like where you've been at this part of your career.
Yeah. But in the last tail of that time frame, I did a whole bunch of stuff around redeveloping internal site search tools, right? Mm-hmm. Right, which is if you organize the data of your website, not just from a standpoint of how to publish it, but if you organize how to you can do magical stuff with the content. Like there's a pile of things in there, right? And then I moved on to do agency work, right? Like SEO wasn't invented when all this stuff was starting,
Right.
It wasn't, right? And eventually went along to really got deep into SEO and started, going to conferences and doing things like that, and then moved over to the agency world, which is a common path for a lot of people, right? Like you're in-house, and in-house can be exciting, but it could also be monotonous, right? There are things that go slow there. Agency work, the pace is faster, the problems you have to overcome are unique in many situations, but they aren't, because it's, many times it's a lot of people relearning stuff you've already learned, and you have to kind of help people move along. It's if your enterprise organization is set up to run like an agency where you're shared resource, distributed information, and working across different things, moving into an agency world is a lot easier. As you get older, there's a lot of people that then go agency work to individual consultant, right? They want to do their own thing, or they want to, start hitting that sunset, and they want to move back into a large branded enterprise, because there's a pile of, if you've ran your career right, there's a pile of like intangible assets you gather along the way, right? And I'm just going to pay homage to a bunch of people at this point, in a sense.
Yeah.
Like, and I've said this in a couple of situations, but I think I spent the first 6 years of my career probably making a fool of myself and not knowing how to work inside an organization. Yep. Learning how, I had no mentor. There was nobody knew what this, like when I came out of high school or went into college, like this wasn't even a thing, right? So there wasn't any whatever. And I come from a construction-minded blue-collar family scenario, right? Which paid off for me in that sense, right? From learning how to build things, right? But being able to be successful in an organization, or to be successful as an agency working with an organization, you really have to find a mentor to be able to help you understand those roads, learn who you could talk to. So inside an organization from the agency side, so who's the person that you're going to liaise with inside that, as an agency to an organization? It's going to help you get around, because the failure parts start to break out when the people who bought the thing don't understand what was bought by the person who wasn't involving them in it. So then there's problems in the organization. A salesperson may have sold something. Are you aligned on the solution needs, right? So, and when the client service or the team comes involved, and many times they're not part of the sales side, it's different here. There's a lot of conversations that occur prior to that. And there's a lot of, before the client is even onboarded, there's a lot of work we do to make sure the pod for the client service team is onboarded to the brain trust of the person that just spent 3, 4, sometimes 6 months, maybe even a year communicating with people inside an organization to learn what matters to them. Right.
You make such a good point, because you're kind of setting up this topic perfectly, which is this idea of the relationship between the enterprise and the agency. Because if you're working in-house, there's so much politics, there's so many different departments there to get your project and initiative off the board, to be that champion, and you're bringing on an agency to help you be successful, not only to have success within the enterprise, but help you build your own career. And so you develop these relationships with these agencies. I'm curious, so the topic today we're going to talk about is really like what causes that SEO agency client relationship to either fail or succeed. And so you've identified over the years, like what are those kind of key aspects that will help it. So kind of go through them. Like what have you seen?
And having sat on both sides, like the conversation is going to kind of do this down the middle. I'll weave stuff through together, right?
Perfect.
So, whether you're in-house or an agency, you've got to know whom the most highest level person is that has sponsorship authority over, or management authority, and what their compensation is based on, right? A huge failure, and this happens in enterprise organizations, no disrespect to enterprise organizations, but many times there is an disproportionate alignment to how a person is compensated to what the direction of the project is going to do or want to do. So the propensity for that person to really take on the onboarding work to do a thing, to make a thing work, has to be valued by what the overall goals are. And the organization needs to make sure that management is incentivized to do the things that'll make the long-term health of the organization successful through digital marketing, right?
Yep.
For example, management that's just compensated on goal completion. Sorry about that, cat feeder in the background.
Nature of the beast.
are going to want to spend to try and get immediate results. And in some portions of, digital consulting or digital marketing, immediate results are not obtainable without a level of work to be done, right? And without that kind of thing, you kind of, you're dead in the water, right, in the beginning, right? Because
that's table stakes. Is setting the expectation that actually shows value. So if you're in the enterprise and you've identified what those are, and now you've got your project you want to kind of like lift off, like what is your next step to make sure that you're going to have that good relationship?
Well, many of the pitfalls or problems start with the fact that people believe that rankings or traffic or conversion are the only KPIs you get out of a digital marketing campaign right now. And it's not the truth, right? The reality is, if you do it correct and pay attention to the data and information, you truly get a better understanding of your audience. And through getting a better understanding of your audience, you get a better nuanced appreciation, understanding of what the data is telling you about what's important for your audience. And it really helps you create new partnerships to find where you could bring in, rivulets or streamlets into a giant flowing stream of business. It really will help you figure out what's relevant to the people that are converting, right? So for example, as a paragraph, last click attribution was wrong when it was invented, but it was the only attribution that was around, right? Mm-hmm. The reality here is businesses need to think past what the conversion is and what the path to conversion is, whatever it might be, because the only way you're going to influence conversion is by influencing the path. And by influencing the path, you have to understand the information about the audience, right?
Yeah. So I mean, you're kind of highlighting the idea that in a way, for an enterprise, any sort of SEO strategy and investment is in essence business intelligence for the rest of the org.
By and large, as the agency person, when you could get to that conversation, you could tamp down and satiate the craving for an executive person to constantly say, where's my return? What am I doing? What am I getting? Right? And when you move in that direction for greater awareness, greater intelligence, you're inevitably helping the partnership in the agency be better stewards of their business because they understand that. It's not just, and some of that does occur as a result of enterprise people. They read magazines, they see some glossy article, and they want the next shiny ball, right? And everybody wants to sign the big, huge logo. I gotta tell you, working with big, huge logos is complicated. It takes a lot of energy, and they're not easy to work with. They aren't always easy to work with. They have their own sets of homogeneous problems. People are afraid of making a statement for upsetting something. They got burned by another agency they don't trust. There's some pet project internally nobody knows about. And there's all sorts of kind of like loose boards and squeaky wheels and other things. And there's tons and tons of like bureaucracy that has to go through to get a thing done. So the reality is, and no offense to big, large agencies, in the process of working through a contract, I'm not really interested in finding the bleeding edge, gleaming, awesome, cutting edge piece of solution to do with you, because it's going to expend so much energy to make it happen. It's almost as if, and it boggles my mind how many large enterprise people just don't do the ABCs of the basic stuff, right? Like they've successfully launched a website, they've got a massively powerful offline brand, but that doesn't translate into the online space, or they've defined and developed technology stacks which are causing problems. There's so many things beyond just understanding, how to interpret the tea leaves to then, like the day of, oh, I just do this and now I'm good for another 6 months is way long gone, right? Like you can get a real good bump if the brand is really willing to address the technical thing. But I can't tell you how many times we spent 2 to 3 months to build out a 100 or so slide deck and talks about 50 to 60 things that the brand needs to do, and then they languish with implementing it, and you're like, your results begins when you do work. Like, my job was to figure out what was wrong and then to be here for you and tell you what needs to happen and keep that going. But you actually have to do work. There's no like, by connecting to me, the osmosis in my head and the team's head doesn't just kind of make things work there. So there's always shared blame and accountability, right? That has to go around for either the failure or the success of a relationship, whether you're internal or external. It's all about how well you can make those partnerships. Right?
So if you're the champion in-house at the enterprise and you're the one who's connected with the agency that you want to bring on to solve these problems, like how much work has to be done before you even talk to the agency?
A ton. Because the worst thing enterprise people do is like, we're going to spin up an RFP, and somebody who knows nothing about digital marketing writes a bunch of stuff that they downloaded from some sort of article written by a person who knows nothing about digital marketing. Yeah. And then they put it into an RFP, and then the people who are talking to you know nothing about how it's going to be used, why it's going to be used. It's some really annoying gate, right? And as a person who's worked with enterprise companies or large brands, medium-sized brands, or was in, many times we'd issue RFPs just to get people's opinion and really not have an RFP. So as an agency person, an RFP is really not a great, like I see companies like, oh, we're issuing an RFP. I'm like, yeah, no, not too interested in it. And the end result for working with you isn't such a huge payoff, right? I get it. You're a great big brand. You're a great big logo. And I love the opportunity to work with companies like that, because when everything aligns, magic happens, right? But the RFP process is in my mind, is a really outdated process driven by people that really don't know what they're doing when it comes to implementing the process. And it makes it hard. It really does make it, it's some sort of like, some sort of filtration barrier state. I mean, think about it this way. A person in a business unit says, I need a headcount improvement for this. They write up something, they send it to a person in HR who may not really know what this person's going to do. They outsource the thing to some sort of headhunter or whatever that person, like the worst part of dealing with interviewing is going through the process of talking to people that know nothing about what you're going to do. It's the same set of problems, right? Now, there are ways of doing away with the RFP through proper interview processes in regards to the organization, right? So if the organization agrees, I want to figure out who's going to do this, right? Because an RFP process is just as daunting for a brand,
right,
as it is.
It's a lot of work.
It's a tremendous amount, and it's sometimes more work for them because I'm going to be doing the same stuff, right? I'm going to be working through my set of steps to understand where things are moving in certain directions, analyzing, compiling things, and providing feedback and whatnot. But the brand has to go do this 4, 5, 6, 7 times and talk to. So why don't you just agree that these are the people in your organization that need to be part of the decision process?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And have them do away with the whole RFP process and have them part of the sales conversations, because RFPs fail because you don't have an understanding of what's occurring inside the organization, because you've got this document that's written. It's almost like the document is written in a way that says, if you don't perform these things in this direction, we're automatically going to filter you. It's like a test, right? Whereas, do your due diligence inside the organization, write up whatever your RFP thing is, and then really just start talking to the people you want. Don't go through this giant RFP submission process. It just really draws you. And I don't think you ask anybody in the agency that goes, do you like answering RFPs? Maybe big giant holding company might do that, where they have entire teams that are just set up for answering RFPs. But then you got another set of problems, because the people in the enterprise that were so wowed by these people that do the RFP, they're never going to see them again, ever.
Right. I mean, so that's the vibe
they're never
I
going
get
to be
from
on
you.
the project. right?
It's like the whole RFP problem is broken. So when like what I'm getting from you is in terms of the success of a relationship, it starts at the beginning. It starts at the planning and the understanding what you're trying to do with the project in the first place.
Right.
It's second, having the person who's launching the initiative and in essence procuring the agency, knowing what they're talking about, or at least knowing what they don't know and having enough of a basic level of education that when they do bring on an agency, it's someone that they're going to trust to educate them. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And then ultimately that it's tied to the executive, the highest levels goals, whether that's, obviously it always comes back to revenue, but also in terms of business intelligence and how it benefits other departments, other divisions, other aspects of the entire enterprise. So if you could sum it all up, if you are the internal in-house person looking to hire an agency, and obviously the agency is going to make you look better, what are like the three things you can do that can set you up for a great relationship with your agency?
One, it's not just about the money. So if you go into this process where you're just trying to make a decision that's largely relevant to the budget in which you're spending, you're going to fail, right? Go into it open-minded with understanding of the people or group of people or person or whomever that is going to be supplying the solutions. Does the caliber of their skill set equate to the value of the cost they're going? And then, if all you're doing is just saying, I'm trying to, somebody else presented this to me, but it's like $100,000 less. Okay, well, go for it. And if you are worried about, your success, buying the cheapest thing is not always the best way to ensure your success. Now, I'm not saying be frivolous or not do your due diligence. I'm certainly not saying that. But don't go into the thing saying high bean counter from my, my accounts payable team is going to come in and dollar cost averages down to head count, to the amount of hours, to whatever, and that's going to be the thing, right? The cost return could be way more expensive if you buy a cheap product or a cheap service from somebody, because you're not going to get your return, and you're going to need to do more elsewhere, right?
So that's so number one is price. Like, don't be 100% price focused. Number two,
you have to have a true understanding of what it is you're trying to do. Don't just be a sheep in a herd, led along by like news feeds and headlines and so-called, gurus. I always hear people get up and go, this is my SEO guru, right? Like every day I'm wowed by people that are in the industry that have been here less than me or even more than me, that there's always a day that a new nugget can be gleaned from a thing and learned from. So when somebody says an SEO guru or the smartest, I'm like, all right, whatever, but
it's like at this point, like SEO is not shiny and new. SEO is proven, it's fundamental. Understand that's what it is, and don't worry about like the innovation part of it. Okay, so two is understanding like the value of SEO at a fundamental level. And number three.
And that SEO is not a thing encapsulated by itself. It's more of a central tenet with spokes, right? Because
it touches everything.
The SEO team has to understand what's occurring on the technology side to fix that. They have to understand operational and procedural efficiency for that organization. They have to understand production processes and production efficiency. They have to understand the contextualized, they have to understand the content. They have to understand audience research, what the marketing goal, like there's a pile of advertising. Yeah. So like you're paying for, if you're just thinking, oh, I'm paying for an SEO guy that could write title text, you're really not buying an SEO. You're buying a person that could, craft title text. But the team you're buying is a cross-section microcosm of your organization. And just look at how much you spend for those expertise in your organization, right? That need help to fulfill their goals. And you're now bringing in a team to help you get there, right? So do you want to put crappy food in your body and then go work out and run a marathon and expect great outcomes? Or do you want to put really good food in your body and your body grows better and you get better performance, right? You really have to think about how well you want to stagger the value of input to generate the best possible output. And a lot of it's tied to choices in the organization.
Yeah.
Right. And the understanding of that organization, because if they don't understand what's about to go down, the agency is going to run up to this. Why? No. Why? No. Why? No. Why? No. We just bought a CMS. We spent $200,000 on a CMS, and we have a contract for 5 years where every year we're spending $200,000 on a CMS. But
that's the perfect third thing. Exactly. It's basically how you are internally politicking and kind of explaining the value in the most obvious, simple way, so you're not wasting money because you're making a wrong decision now and having to pay for it later. Chris, this is awesome. I'm excited for future topics. We are going to touch on everything enterprise, SEO, and the relationship. Come back, check us in the future. This is Advice from the Heart with Chris Hart. It's happening. It's happening. I am Garrett Sussman of iPullRank. Thank you for checking us out. If you have any questions, definitely hit us up in the comments. We will catch you later.